She came to return a stranger's lost wallet. Then he recognized the name she had been hiding for 8 years.
What if the most ordinary moment of your life led to the most extraordinary discovery? What if the person you were supposed to protect had been protecting you all along? What if coming home meant confronting the darkest secret your family had ever kept hidden? One rainy evening, a stranger finds a wallet. Inside it, a photograph. But that photograph holds the key to a mystery that has haunted a family for 8 long years. A mystery that will change everything they thought they knew about love, sacrifice, and survival. Claire Morgan is a woman living in the shadows of her own life. She works quietly, speaks softly, and keeps to herself. But there's something in her eyes, something haunted, something lost. She doesn't know it yet, but tonight, her life is about to intersect with her past in a way that will shake her to her very core. Daniel Carter is a man carrying the weight of a family tragedy. His younger sister vanished 8 years ago without a trace. He spent countless nights wondering what happened to her, blaming himself, searching for answers that never came. He has no idea that tonight, his questions will finally find their way home. Their mother, Mrs. Eleanor Carter, is a woman who never stopped waiting. She kept a photograph on her nightstand for 8 years. She wore her grief like a second skin. But she never lost hope. She never stopped believing that somehow, someday, her daughter would find her way back. The rain had been falling for nearly an hour when Claire Morgan found the wallet. Not the kind of rain that comes and goes quickly, but the kind that settles in, that makes you feel like the whole world is crying with you. The kind of rain that makes you believe in second chances, even when you've stopped believing in anything else. She was walking home from work, holding a broken umbrella over her head, the fabric torn in 2 places, doing almost nothing to shield her from the downpour. Her clothes were soaked through, clinging to her skin uncomfortably. Her hair dripped water down her neck. She didn't care. After 8 years of not caring much about anything, what was a little rain? The street was nearly empty. Most people had the sense to be home by now, warm and dry, sitting with loved ones over dinner. Claire had no one waiting for her. Her apartment was small and cold, the kind of place you go to sleep and wake up from, nothing more. She had no family, no close friends, no one she called to tell about her day. That was how she liked it. That was how it had to be. It was then she noticed the black leather wallet lying beside a parked car, partially hidden by a puddle. It would have been easy to walk past. Easy to pretend she didn't see it. But something made her stop. Something in that moment made her care about a complete stranger's lost possessions. She picked it up carefully, water dripping from her fingers. The leather was soft, expensive looking. She opened it, shaking off the excess water as gently as she could. Inside were several credit cards, all pristine, all bearing the same name, Daniel Carter. There was a driver's license with a photograph of a man in his early 30s, dark-haired, serious-eyed. There was some cash, untouched. There was a gym membership card, but one thing caught Claire's attention immediately. Behind the photograph section, tucked carefully behind what looked like an old family photo, was a small handwritten note. The paper was worn, creased with age, as if it had been read many times and then carefully tucked away again. Claire didn't read it. She didn't want to invade someone's privacy any more than she already had. She simply closed the wallet, turned it over in her hands, and decided to return it. It was the right thing to do. It was the kind thing to do. And maybe, just maybe, doing something kind for someone else would help her feel less guilty about all the things she hadn't done for the people she loved. The address on the driver's license belonged to a house only 15 minutes away. A large house, situated on a quiet street with trees that seemed to have stood for decades. The kind of neighborhood where families put down roots, where people stayed. Not like her. She had become an expert at leaving. When Claire arrived at the house, she stood outside the gate for a long moment before moving forward. The lights were on inside. She could see shadows moving behind the windows. Real life happening inside. Real people with real connections. For a second, she almost turned around. Almost left the wallet on the doorstep and walked away into the darkness. But that would have been the coward's way out. She had already been a coward for 8 years. So she moved forward. She opened the gate. She walked up the stone pathway. She hesitated before ringing the bell, her hand hovering near the doorbell for what felt like an eternity. A few seconds later, the door opened. A tall man in his early 30s stood there, still wearing his work clothes, a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dress pants, no jacket. His dark hair was slightly messy, as if he'd been running his hands through it. His expression was serious, almost worried. He was clearly not expecting visitors. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was polite but cautious, the way people speak to strangers at the door. Claire held out the wallet. Her hands were still wet, still cold. "I think you dropped this." It was outside, by a parked car on the street. "I found it when I was walking home from work." The man's eyes immediately moved to the wallet. For a moment, she saw relief flood across his face. Then something else flickered there, something she couldn't quite identify. "You found it?" he asked, seeming almost surprised that someone would actually return a lost wallet. "Yes. It was outside, in a puddle actually. I dried it off as best I could." He took it from her hands carefully, as if it were something fragile. "Thank you. Thank you so much. This means more to me than you know." Claire smiled politely, the kind of automatic smile she had perfected over 8 years of not wanting to be memorable. She turned to leave. She had done her good deed. She could go home now and feel, for one night at least, like she was a decent person. Claire paused. She didn't turn around immediately. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to keep walking. But something in his voice made her turn back. He had opened the wallet. He was checking to make sure everything was still inside. His eyes scanned the cards, the cash, and then, they stopped. His whole body seemed to freeze. He slowly pulled out the old photograph, the one that had been tucked behind the others. It was worn at the edges, creased with time, but the image was still clear. A woman and a young girl, standing together, both smiling at the camera. The woman was maybe in her 50s. The girl was maybe 17. The man looked at that photograph for what seemed like an eternity. Then his eyes shifted from the photo to Claire's face. He studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Claire froze. She wasn't expecting the question. She didn't know how to answer it. The name she was using, the one everyone called her, felt like a lie on her tongue. But it was the only name she had now. "Why?" she asked, though she already knew the answer was coming. She could feel it in the way he was looking at her. She could feel it in the electricity in the air between them. "Your name," he said again. It wasn't a request this time. It was almost a demand. "Please. Just tell me your name." She hesitated. Every second felt like an eternity. Every breath felt like it took all her strength. "Claire," she said finally. "My name is Claire." The man stared at her. The photograph trembled slightly in his hands. She watched as recognition began to dawn on his face, not because of anything she had said or done, but because of something he was seeing. Something he was remembering. Something his body was recognizing even as his mind struggled to catch up. "Claire Morgan," he whispered. Her heart stopped. Her blood turned to ice. How could he know her last name? She had never told him. She had never told anyone her last name. She had been so careful, so cautious, living her life in a way designed to leave no trace, to draw no attention, to be as invisible as a ghost. "How do you know my last name?" she asked, and her voice came out in a whisper she barely recognized as her own. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he slowly pulled the old photograph toward her. "Look at it," he said. Really look at it. She looked. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. The woman in the photograph was familiar, but in the way that dreams are familiar, close enough to feel real, but distant enough to seem impossible. The girl in the photograph. The girl in the photograph had her eyes. The same shape, the same color. The same way of looking at the camera with a mixture of sadness and hope. The girl in the photograph had a small scar near her eyebrow, just like the one Claire saw every morning in the mirror. "No," Claire whispered. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do," the man said. His voice was barely a whisper now. "I do." He stepped closer to her, and she stepped backward. The doorway suddenly felt like a threshold between two worlds, the world she had been living in, and a world she had spent 8 years running from. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said. "This is my mother, and this is my sister. This is Lily." Claire closed her eyes. The rain continued to fall around them. The night seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, standing in the doorway between one life and another, everything Claire had run from, everything she had tried to escape, everything she had built her existence on trying to forget, came rushing back. "Where have you been for 8 years?" Daniel asked, his voice breaking. "Where have you been, Lily?" And before Claire could stop herself, before she could turn and run and disappear once more, the truth came out. "You need to forget you saw me." Those words hung in the air between them like a confession. Like a prayer. Like a warning. Like the beginning of the end. 8 years isn't just a long time to be gone. It's a lifetime of secrets. A lifetime of running. A lifetime of lying to yourself about why you can't go home. But sometimes, one moment, one ordinary moment in the rain, can shatter 8 years of silence and force you to confront the one truth you've been hiding from since the day you disappeared. What happens when the safe life you built for yourself comes face to face with the family you left behind? What happens when love becomes more dangerous than the lies that separated you? Daniel couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't do anything but stare at the woman standing on his porch in the rain, dripping wet, her eyes filled with tears that had nothing to do with the weather. "Why did you disappear?" he asked, and his voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone shattered. Someone who had spent 8 years gluing the pieces of his life back together only to have them fall apart again in a single instant. She shook her head. The movement was subtle, but it told him everything. This wasn't about running away from something boring or ordinary. This was about running away from something terrible. Something dark enough that it had stolen 8 years from her life. "I didn't choose to disappear," she said quietly. They stood there on the porch, rain coming down in sheets around them. Daniel followed her when she turned and walked to the edge of the covered area, where the rain could reach them both. He didn't care about getting wet anymore. He didn't care about anything except understanding. "What happened?" he asked. She looked toward the dark street, as if searching for something in the shadows. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. He thought she would run again, just like she had run 8 years ago. He could see it in the tension of her shoulders, in the way her hands trembled at her sides. 8 years ago, she finally said, "I witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see." The words came slowly, like she was pulling them from somewhere deep inside herself, somewhere she had locked them away and tried to forget. Daniel's expression hardened. He was listening now, really listening. 8 years of wondering, and finally, he was about to get answers. "What?" he demanded. "The night I disappeared, I saw your father's business partner stealing money from the company." Daniel felt the world shift beneath his feet. His father, Thomas Carter, had built his company from nothing. For 40 years, he had worked with the same partner, Richard Summers. They had been friends, or so Daniel had believed. More than friends, brothers, really. They had built something together that had provided for Daniel's family, that had put Daniel through college, that had created the life Daniel now lived. "Our father died 2 years ago," Daniel said. There was something in his voice that demanded explanation, demanded justice for his father's memory. I know. Then why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you come home and tell someone? She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was so raw, so real, that it made him step back. She had aged somehow. Not in years, she was still young, still his sister in appearance. But she had aged in a way that had nothing to do with time. Her eyes had seen things that no 17-year-old should ever see. Because he found me, she said. Daniel went silent. His mind raced, trying to understand. Richard Summers. Richard Summers had found her. Somehow, Lily had witnessed the theft, and Richard Summers had discovered that she knew. After I saw what he did, Lily continued, I knew I couldn't just pretend I didn't see it. I was going to tell Dad. I was going to tell you. But before I could say anything to anyone, Richard came to me. He threatened you, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He could see it now, see the fear that must have gripped her that night, the terror of a 17-year-old girl facing a man who had everything to lose. He told me that if I said anything to anyone, he would hurt you and Mom. He said he had ways of making it happen. He said he had connections. He said. She paused, swallowing hard. He said he would make sure that by the time the police sorted out what happened, you and Mom would already be gone. Daniel reached out to her, but she pulled away. I was 17, Daniel. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if he was bluffing or if he really meant it. But I couldn't take the risk. I couldn't risk your life or Mom's life, not for anything. So I made a choice. You disappeared, Daniel whispered. I changed my name and left town. I used some money I had been saving from babysitting jobs, and I got on a bus. I drove for hours until I reached the next city, and I got off and just started walking. I found a small job at a diner, and I paid for a room with 3 other girls. I made myself invisible. I became someone else. And every single day, I promised myself it was to keep you and Mom safe. Daniel felt tears streaming down his face. You could have called me. I was 17, she said again, and he could hear the desperation in her voice, the need to make him understand. I was terrified. And every time I thought about calling, I thought about what Richard had said. I thought about what would happen if he found out. So I didn't. I stayed away. I moved around a lot. I used different names sometimes, took jobs under the table, did whatever I could to not leave a trace. 8 years, Daniel said. 8 years, Lily. Every single day, she said, and her voice broke completely now. Every single day of those 8 years, I thought about you. I thought about Mom. I missed her every single day. She said those last words as if they were the most important words in the world, as if years of pain and sacrifice had been building toward this one confession. Her shoulders shook as she cried, 8 years of held-back tears finally breaking free. I was protecting you, she said. Or at least, I thought I was. I thought that as long as I stayed away, as long as I didn't contact you, as long as I disappeared completely, Richard would think I was too scared to ever come back. I thought my silence was the price of your safety. Daniel's mind was reeling. He thought about the years after Lily disappeared. The police investigations. The endless nights when his mother wouldn't eat or sleep, just sat in Lily's room, staring at the wall. The way his father had changed after that, becoming harder, quieter, as if some essential part of him had died along with his daughter. And through all of it, neither of them had known the real reason. Neither of them had known that Lily had sacrificed everything to protect them. Did you ever tell anyone? Daniel asked. Did you ever tell the police what you saw? Did you ever report Richard? She shook her head. How could I? I had disappeared without a trace. I had no documentation, no way to prove who I was. And I was so afraid. If I came forward, if I told anyone what I had seen, Richard would know where I was. He would find me. And even worse, he might find you. He wouldn't have been able to. You don't know that, she said, and there was an edge of panic in her voice. You don't know what he was capable of. I was a scared 17-year-old girl who had just seen someone commit a crime, and he was a grown man with connections and money and everything to lose. What would stop him from doing what he said he would do? Daniel reached out for her again, and this time, he grabbed her hand before she could pull away. Her skin was cold, wet from the rain. Her fingers trembled in his grip. Come inside, he said. Please. Come inside where it's warm and dry, and we can figure this out. We can figure it out together. She shook her head. What if she doesn't forgive me? What if who doesn't forgive you? Mom, she said, and the word was barely audible. What if she hates me for disappearing? What if she hates me for not coming home sooner? What if she can't forgive me for being gone for 8 years? Daniel's heart shattered. He thought about his mother, about the way she had aged in those 8 years, about the grief that had etched itself into the lines of her face. But he also thought about the way his mother spoke about Lily, about the way her voice changed whenever Lily's name came up. His mother had never stopped loving her daughter. His mother had never stopped hoping. She never stopped waiting for you, Daniel said, and he squeezed her hand gently. She has a photograph of you on her nightstand. She's had it there every single night for 8 years. And she talks about you. Every single day, she talks about you like you're still here, like you're just in the next room. She never stopped loving you, Lily. Not for one single moment. Lily looked at him with tears streaming down her face, and Daniel saw something in her that he hadn't seen in 8 years. He saw his sister. Not the scared girl who had run away, but the young woman who had made an impossible choice to protect the people she loved. He saw someone who had suffered, who had sacrificed, who had endured unimaginable loneliness so that others could be safe. Come home, he said again, and this time, his voice was full of certainty. Please. Come home. That evening, Daniel brought his sister home. Their mother, Eleanor Carter, was sitting in the living room, reading a book that she had read at least a dozen times before. It was a habit she had developed years ago, reading the same books over and over, finding comfort in the familiar words, in the predictability of stories that never changed. She looked up when Daniel entered with someone behind him, and for a moment, she didn't understand what she was seeing. There was a woman with wet hair, wearing soaked clothes, with haunted eyes and the kind of sadness that only comes from years of loneliness. Daniel stood beside his sister. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His mother would understand. Mom. He began, but his voice wasn't steady enough to complete the sentence. Eleanor looked at the woman more carefully. And then she saw it. She saw the eyes, those distinctive eyes that had belonged to her daughter since the day she was born. She saw the small scar near the eyebrow from a bicycle accident that happened when Lily was 14. She saw the way the woman stood, the way she held her shoulders, the way she looked back at her mother with a mixture of hope and terror. Lily? Eleanor whispered. Claire, or Lily, or whoever she really was, couldn't speak. She simply nodded. Eleanor rose from her chair slowly, as if she were moving through water, as if the world was moving in slow motion around her. She walked toward her daughter. And then she closed the distance between them and pulled her into an embrace that 8 years of longing had been building toward. They held each other as if they were drowning, as if they could save each other by holding tight enough. They held each other and cried, and in that embrace, 8 years of pain, confusion, fear, and loneliness seemed to dissolve. Later that night, as the three of them sat together in the living room with tea that nobody really wanted but everyone needed, Lily finally told them everything. She told them about the theft, about Richard's threats, about the terror of being 17 and believing that her silence was the only thing standing between her family and disaster. And Eleanor, who had suffered for 8 years believing that her daughter had simply chosen to disappear, who had blamed herself for not protecting Lily well enough, who had aged a decade in those 8 years, Eleanor finally understood that her daughter had been protecting her all along. "You never should have had to make that choice," Eleanor said, holding Lily's hand. "You were just a child." "I was old enough to understand what I had seen," Lily replied. "I was old enough to understand what could happen if I told anyone. And I was old enough to know that keeping you safe was more important than anything else." Daniel listened to them, and he realized something that shattered his heart all over again. His sister had spent 8 years running, 8 years sacrificing her own happiness, 8 years living in fear and loneliness, all because she had loved them enough to make an impossible choice. And for 8 years, his family had suffered because they didn't know the truth. It was the kind of sacrifice that couldn't be measured in years or miles or tears. It was the kind of love that asked everything and expected nothing in return. And the lost girl who had spent 8 years hiding had finally come home. Sometimes, coming home isn't about the place. It's about the moment when you stop running and let yourself be loved by the people who have been waiting for you all along. It's about understanding that forgiveness isn't something you give to others, it's something you finally allow yourself to receive. And it's about discovering that the home you've been searching for has been searching for you, too. The rain had stopped by midnight, leaving the world clean and fresh, as if it had been washed of all its sorrows. Eleanor sat on the edge of Lily's childhood bed, running her fingers over the quilt she had made for her daughter years ago. The room had been kept exactly as Lily had left it on the night she disappeared. Eleanor couldn't bring herself to change anything. She wanted to preserve this space, this moment in time, in case one day her daughter found her way back. Now that daughter sat beside her, and Eleanor still couldn't quite believe it was real. She kept reaching out to touch Lily's arm, to make sure she was solid, that she wasn't a dream that would vanish in the morning light. "I kept everything," Eleanor said quietly. "I couldn't change anything. Your books, your posters, your school pictures. I even put fresh sheets on this bed every month, even though no one had slept in it for 8 years." Lily's eyes filled with tears again. "Mom. I knew you would come back," Eleanor continued. "I didn't know when, or how, or in what condition. But I knew. A mother knows these things. I felt it in my bones, in my heart, in every fiber of my being. You were alive. You were out there somewhere, and you would come home." Daniel stood in the doorway, watching his mother and sister reunite. He thought about how fragile life was, how quickly everything could change. One moment, Lily was on her way home from work. The next moment, she had found a wallet. And in finding that wallet, she had found her way back to the place she had been running from for 8 years. "What happens now?" Lily asked, and her voice was small and uncertain, the voice of a child asking for reassurance. "Now," Eleanor said, "we heal. Together. As a family." But healing, as Lily would soon discover, was not a simple process. It was not a matter of coming home, saying sorry, and everything returning to the way it had been. 8 years of separation, 8 years of secrets, 8 years of living in fear and isolation, these things had changed her in ways that couldn't be undone. Over the following days, Lily struggled with the reality of being home. She had spent so long living in isolation, speaking to no one, trusting no one, that the constant presence of family felt overwhelming. She would wake up in her childhood bedroom, disoriented, wondering for a moment if she had dreamed the entire reunion. And then she would remember that it was real, and the anxiety would set in all over again. Eleanor recognized the signs of trauma. She had read books about PTSD, about the long-term effects of fear and stress. She understood that her daughter had survived something terrible, and that survival had come at a cost. She had not lost her daughter for 8 years only to lose her now to the invisible wounds that trauma had carved into her soul. One night, about a week after Lily had come home, Eleanor found her daughter sitting on the back porch, staring out at the darkness. It was 3 in the morning. Lily hadn't slept. "Nightmares?" Eleanor asked gently, sitting down beside her. Lily nodded. Sometimes it feels like if I fall asleep, I'll wake up back in that little apartment in that strange city, and this will have all been a dream. I'm so afraid of waking up that I can't close my eyes. Eleanor took her daughter's hand. You're home, sweetheart. This is real. I'm real. Your brother is real. Your room is real. The life we're going to build together is real. But what if Richard? Richard Summers is not a threat anymore, Eleanor said quietly. Daniel found out that he was arrested 2 years ago. His theft was finally discovered. He's in prison now, Lily. The man who drove you away is locked up. He can't hurt you anymore. Lily's whole body went rigid. He's, what? In prison, Eleanor repeated. Has been for 2 years. Your father found the embezzlement shortly before he died. He reported it to the authorities. They investigated, and they found everything: years of theft, of fraud. Richard pleaded guilty. He's serving a 15-year sentence. Lily felt something inside her break open. For 8 years, she had been running from a man who couldn't even chase her anymore. For 8 years, she had believed that coming home would put her family in danger, when all the time, the danger had already been contained. The threat she had been afraid of had been neutralized years ago, and she hadn't known. Why didn't anyone tell me, she asked, and there was an edge of hysteria in her voice. Why didn't anyone find me and tell me that I didn't have to hide anymore? Because, Eleanor said gently, you made yourself impossible to find. You were so careful, so determined not to leave a trace, that we had no way to reach you. We tried everything: private investigators, missing persons organizations, appeals on television, searches online. But you had disappeared completely. You had erased yourself so thoroughly that there was nothing for us to find. Lily understood then the impossible position she had placed her family in. She had run to protect them, but in doing so, she had also abandoned them to their grief. She had made herself impossible to find, and then blamed them for not finding her. She had created a situation where her sacrifice became a punishment for everyone involved. I need to apologize, Lily said the next morning. She had called Daniel into the kitchen, and Eleanor was there as well. I need to apologize for what I did to you both. I know I had reasons. I know I was trying to protect you. But that doesn't change the fact that I left you without an explanation. That doesn't change the fact that I let you suffer without knowing where I was or what had happened to me. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. You were 17 years old, Lily. You were terrified. You made the best choice you could with the information you had and the fear you were experiencing. We're not angry at you. We're sad that you had to go through that. We're heartbroken that you spent 8 years isolated and afraid. But we're not angry. But you suffered, Lily said. You aged 10 years in the 8 years I was gone. I saw pictures online, Mom. I saw news articles about you looking for me. I saw the way you deteriorated, and I couldn't do anything about it because I was too afraid to come home. Yes, I suffered, Eleanor said, and there was no point in denying it. Your father suffered. Daniel suffered. Our whole family suffered. But that suffering created something in me that nothing else could have created. It taught me how strong love can be. It taught me that no matter how painful loss is, it's nothing compared to the joy of reunion. It taught me that forgiveness is not something you give to someone else, it's something you give to yourself when you realize that holding on to anger only hurts the people you love. Daniel added his voice to the conversation. Lily, we all made choices that we had to make with the information we had at the time. You chose to leave to protect us. We chose to never stop looking for you because we loved you. Neither of us was wrong. We were just separated by fear and circumstances beyond our control. But we're together now. And that's what matters. Over the following weeks, Lily began to heal. Not overnight, not completely, but gradually. She started eating full meals again. She started sleeping through the night. She started talking about her future instead of dwelling on her past. She got a job at a bookstore, a real job this time, using her real name. She joined a support group for people who had experienced trauma. She started to see a therapist who specialized in helping people recover from prolonged periods of fear and isolation. And she spent time with her family. Eleanor and Lily would sit together in the kitchen, baking cookies like they used to, while Eleanor told stories about the 8 years that Lily had missed. She told her about Daniel's college graduation, about his job as an engineer. She told her about the friends she had made, about the travels she had taken. She wove the story of the last 8 years in a way that made Lily feel like she had been there all along, like she had missed moments but not memories. Daniel taught Lily how to drive a car, something she had never gotten the chance to learn. They would drive around the city, and he would point out the changes that had happened over 8 years, new buildings, new restaurants, new parts of town that had developed. They would talk about their dreams and their fears, and slowly, Lily began to understand that the brother who had opened the door that rainy night was still the same person she remembered, and yet he had grown and changed in ways that reflected the 8 years they had spent apart. 3 months after Lily came home, Eleanor suggested that they invite some close family friends over for a small dinner. Lily was nervous. She didn't know how to be around people, how to make conversation, how to be present without being overwhelmed by fear. But she agreed to try. The dinner was not as terrifying as she had feared. The people who came were people who had known Lily as a child, and they welcomed her back with genuine warmth and happiness. No one asked her where she had been or what she had been doing, understanding that such questions were too intrusive. Instead, they told her about their own lives, about their families, about the ways the world had changed. And slowly, Lily began to feel like she was part of the world again, instead of observing it from the outside. One night, about 6 months after she had come home, Lily found herself alone in the kitchen with that old wallet. She had kept it, though she had long since returned it to Daniel. He had given it back to her after he had made sure everything was in order, understanding that it had become a symbol of the night everything changed. She opened it carefully and pulled out the old note that had been tucked behind the photograph all those years, the note she had been too afraid to read the night she found the wallet on the street. The handwriting was her mother's, and the words were faded but still legible. She had read it 100 times since she had come home, but it still made her cry every single time. If you are ever lost, remember this: no matter where you go, you will always have a home. Lily pressed the note against her heart, and she finally allowed herself to feel something she had denied herself for 8 years. She allowed herself to feel safe. She allowed herself to feel loved. She allowed herself to feel home. Later that night, she sat down with Eleanor and Daniel, and she tried to explain what she was feeling. "I spent 8 years believing that I was protecting you by staying away," she said. "I thought that my silence, my absence, my sacrifice was the price of your safety. And in my mind, it made sense. I had seen something terrible, and the only way to keep you from being harmed was to remove myself from your lives completely." She paused, searching for the words to explain something that went beyond logic or reason. "But I realize now that I was wrong about something fundamental," she continued. "I thought that love meant protecting people from the truth. I thought that it meant keeping secrets, staying away, sacrificing your own happiness so that others could be happy. And I carried that belief for 8 years like a badge of honor." Eleanor reached over and took her daughter's hand. "But love isn't about that," Lily said. "Real love isn't about protecting people from pain or truth or difficulty. Real love is about standing beside people when they're experiencing pain, when they're facing difficulty, when they're dealing with hard truths. Real love is about being vulnerable enough to let people see your struggles and brave enough to help them with theirs." Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he listened to his sister speak. "All those years," Lily continued, "I was trying to protect you from a danger that I believed I had created. But in doing so, I created a much bigger danger, the danger of separation, of loneliness, of not knowing what had happened to someone you love. The danger of being left behind without explanation. And I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry for being a coward for so long. You were brave, Eleanor said firmly. You were brave because you made a choice that you thought would protect us, even when it meant sacrificing yourself. That's not cowardice, sweetheart. That's love. But I was wrong, Lily said. I was wrong because I didn't give you the choice to stand beside me. I didn't give you the chance to be brave with me. I didn't believe that together, we could face anything, even the things that terrified me. Eleanor and Daniel looked at each other, and in that look, there was a conversation happening that didn't need words. They were thinking about the same thing, about how love is not a one-way sacrifice. It's a mutual exchange, a back-and-forth dance of support and understanding. It's about letting people love you, even when loving you is hard. We stand together from now on, Daniel said. Whatever comes, we face it as a family. No more running, Eleanor added. No more hiding, Lily agreed. In the months that followed, Lily's life transformed in ways she had never imagined possible. She got promoted at the bookstore to assistant manager. She started taking online college courses, working toward a degree she had abandoned 8 years ago. She made friends, real friends who knew her and liked her for who she actually was, not a carefully constructed persona designed to deflect attention. But more importantly, she healed. There was no magic moment where her trauma disappeared. There was no grand epiphany that erased 8 years of fear and isolation. But there were small moments, moments when she realized that an hour had passed without her thinking about Richard Summers, moments when she smiled without forcing it, moments when she felt genuine joy instead of the absence of pain. These small moments accumulated, one on top of another, until they formed the foundation of a new life. A life where Lily was not defined by what she had lost or what she had survived. A life where she was defined by what she had gained, a family, a purpose, a future. Nearly a year after Lily came home, Eleanor organized a small celebration. It wasn't announced as an anniversary of the reunion, but everyone knew what it was about. It was a recognition of survival, of perseverance, of the power of love to overcome any obstacle. As they sat around the dinner table that night, Eleanor made a toast. 8 years ago, she began, her voice strong and clear, we experienced the kind of loss that we thought would destroy us. We thought we would never recover. We thought we would never smile again, never laugh again, never feel whole again. And then, one rainy night, everything changed. She looked at Lily with eyes full of love. My daughter came home. Not the same daughter who had left us, because she couldn't be. She had been through experiences that had changed her in profound ways. She came home carrying the weight of 8 years of fear and isolation. But she also came home with wisdom, with strength, with a deeper understanding of love and sacrifice than most people ever achieve. Eleanor paused, swallowing hard. And in her coming home, we all came home. We came home to a place where we could be honest with each other, where we could share our pain without shame, where we could rebuild what we thought was lost forever. She raised her glass. To Lily. To the brave young woman who made an impossible choice to protect her family. To the courageous adult who chose to face her fear and come home. And to all of us, for learning that love is not about protecting each other from pain. Love is about walking through pain together, and emerging stronger on the other side. They drank to that, and as Lily looked around the table at the two people who had loved her enough to never stop waiting for her, she understood something fundamental about the nature of home. Home is not a place. Home is not even a moment. Home is the accumulation of all the moments where people choose each other, over and over again, despite fear, despite pain, despite everything that might make it easier to give up. Home is the result of showing up, not just physically, but emotionally, vulnerably, honestly. Home is what you get when you finally stop running and let yourself be loved. That night, Lily slept through the night without nightmares. She woke in her childhood bedroom and felt, for the first time in 8 years, at peace. The girl who had disappeared was gone. She had been replaced by a woman a woman who had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to protect the people you love by keeping secrets. Sometimes the bravest thing is to be vulnerable. To be honest. To share your struggles and your pain and your fear, and to let the people who love you stand beside you while you face it all. The lost girl had returned, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a living, breathing, healing human being. And in her return, she had taught her family something that no one else could have taught them, that love is not measured by the distance you're willing to travel, or the sacrifices you're willing to make. Love is measured by the willingness to try again, despite everything that has tried to keep you apart. Love is measured by the decision to come home. And the family that had been broken was slowly, carefully, with patience and grace, being made whole again.